listen to me then, I bet they feel me now. Don't let me lose it. The booth not about to prove it. I set goals and pursue it. You the best to never do it. Invest my money, talking fluent, stupid, ducking the Judas. It broke my heart, but open my eyes. You have no honor, I have no choice. Chasing the commas till I'm gone. I've been left for a minute. On my way home, mama, I promise, got caught up in it. Damn. Everybody eats when I'm batting at the plate. First, second, third, home, $1 million base.
What's up, people? Hotep Jesus. We back. Shout out to my sponsor, Syscoin. Best of Bitcoin, the best of Ethereum. Using merge mining as a security. And Ethereum for the flexibility. And ZK rollups to make those transactions fast and cheap. Shout out to the whole Syscoin team. Patrick, Jag, Alex, and the whole team. Appreciate y'all. Also, Hotep Con tickets on sale right now. Go to hotepnation.com, get your Hotep Con tickets. Go to Hotep Nation, hit the Hotep Con button in the menu. This is our 3rd annual event. I want to see you there. I want you to come hang out with us. With that being said, I have a very special guest today. This is Miss Janice McAfee. Many of you tuning in right now know who this woman is. Of course you are. You guys are big fans of the McAfee family. I told her in the green room, I wanted to start this conversation out so she knew where I was, and then she can sort of guide me and get me caught up. So, Janice, basically what happened was the internet told me that John transitioned into the next round. Now, I personally cannot handle that transitioning. It's tough for me. So, especially when it's a celebrity. So, like, to me, John's like in Cuba with Tupac, okay? Like, he's not, I refuse to believe that, okay? Now, I know that's just me being in denial. I don't know how he passed. When I saw that, I was like, nope, I'm not reading this. This is not true. He's going to come back like he always does. You know, tell me what happened with his passing. Can you catch me up to date on that?
So thank you for having me, by the way, and hello everybody watching.
Absolutely.
So John transitioned. He was killed. Well, we'll get into that. But anyways, he died on June 23rd. And the official narrative is that he died of suicide and he hung himself in his cell in the prison cell. Which, if any of you know, obviously that he tweeted while he was in jail that he would never do that. You know, if he was found dead in his cell that way, then it was not by his own hand. So, and I too have grappled with the denial. I will readily admit that. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who choose to believe that John is somewhere hiding out. I've heard a lot of people say that they think he's under WITSEC, you know, somewhere under WITSEC. And this is just my speculation, but I feel that that was probably the plan, you know, maybe not on that day, but probably the plan. Just John being John, right? I think everybody's familiar with the fact that he faked a heart attack so he could get out of Guatemala, right? So this is why I have the speculation that obviously that probably was the plan, but they killed him instead. And that is my belief. I was able to identify his remains. So, and even in that was kind of complicated because they were in the middle of doing the autopsy. So they had him completely covered, like from the neck down. So I wasn't able to do a full viewing. But I know who I saw. I know what I saw, and I know who I saw, and I know that was him. Okay, so, but I'm just in the spirit of being transparent and letting people know what's happening. I want to be transparent and let everybody know what's going on. So I perfectly understand that people want to believe that he's still alive somewhere, but I just don't. I just don't believe that's true. Because I also believe that I would have heard something by now. He would have reached out by now and said something, and maybe not to me personally, but maybe just to the world. I think we would have gotten something, right? Just because that's just John. You know what I'm saying? I think his ego would not have allowed him to stay silent this long. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so,
how did he end up in that prison? I'm not even aware of how that happened.
So so we came to Spain. Well, I'm not sure if you know the situation. We ended up leaving America in January 2019. And we left because John had gotten a letter from one of his attorneys in Tennessee saying that they had been subpoenaed to give testimony in a grand jury setting about John and his dealings with John. And so from that, John found out that this grand jury, they were looking to bring charges against him, which were going to be tax related. So we immediately left and went to the Bahamas. He chose the Bahamas because there's no income tax there. So they couldn't legally extradite him from there because the country that you're in, whatever crime you're being accused of has to be a crime in the country that you're in. So that's why we were in the Bahamas. And so they then came up with the idea to just try to arrest him on anything. And we actually had gotten footage from our boat of the police coming onto the boat looking for us, but we had gone into hiding on the island. And so then subsequently, after that, we left to Cuba because obviously Cuba is the best place to be because there's not going to be any cooperation between Cuba and America. And so we ended up actually getting kicked out of Cuba because of the U.S. putting pressure on the Cuban authorities to turn us over. And so instead of them doing that, they said, you have 72 hours to leave. So that's what we did. And we went to the Dominican Republic. And from there was a big thing where we were illegally detained, and then they finally let us go. And John and I went to the UK, and from there we made it into Europe, and we eventually made it to Spain. And we were there maybe a little over a year, and, traveling, just enjoying life, John being John. And we actually had went on a trip to Germany where I think, if you're not familiar, there was like reports of him being stopped or arrested in the airport or something. So there was, and I'm only mentioning this because when he flew on his UK passport. So there was no problem with his passport at all. No flag, no warrants, no nothing. And this was maybe a month before he was arrested, maybe a little more time than that, maybe about a month and a half before he was arrested. So no problem with his passport. And so come October 3rd, I believe it was, he was going to be flying out to Turkey, and he's going through security. And he said that they detained him because his passport was flagged as stolen. And so while they were detaining him, it was then the next day that then this warrant, this Interpol warrant that just materialized out of nowhere. And all of a sudden he's being now held for extradition for tax related. I believe it was tax evasion or tax fraud, something like that. And so, yeah.
That was in Turkey?
Yeah. No. That was in Spain. I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't clear that up. So okay. He was flying out of Barcelona to Turkey. And when we flew to Germany, we flew out from Barcelona, the same airport. So again, no problem. About a month and a half earlier with his passport, no problem whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, there's this warrant. So that's also been kind of the official narrative, that he's been like hiding out on the run from this warrant, which that's not been the case. The warrant just materialized once he was detained in October at the airport.
Right. Why they want John so bad though?
You know what? Okay, so he shared with me, and he shared this a lot about what happened with him in Belize. So this has been kind of an ongoing battle that he's been in, or had been in, I should say. So what happened in Belize was, I think around April of 2012, he said he had 2 representatives from the Belizean government come to his property in the jungle where he had his lab. He was working on a topical antivirus because in the jungle he was getting bit up by whatever jungle animals or little insects that bite you.
Yeah.
And so actually when I first met him, he had marks all up and down his arms and legs. So that's what he was working on. And he actually had samples that he was giving out to the locals, and it was working. So this is what he was doing. And these 2 representatives came to his property and asked if he would, like to give a donation to whatever political party, and they would give him favors, land, women, whatever it was that he wanted or needed. They could help him, they could help facilitate that. And he said no. And they left. And he said a week later, his property was raided by the GSU, which is the gang suppression unit. And they destroyed his lab. They shot his dog. They arrested him because they said that he had a gun that wasn't licensed, but then he was able to produce the license. So they dropped that charge. And then a week after that, the same representatives came back and asked if he'd reconsidered his donation. And so John being John, that obviously infuriated him. And what he decided to do was gift some of the secretaries that worked for the higher up officials within the Belizean government laptops that had keystroke logging information on it. And so he was able, obviously, to backdoor the situation and get in, because what he was trying to find was evidence that they had set him up for that raid, because he wanted an apology. I'm not sure what the apology was going to do. And, he would joke, like how stupid that was, but that's just John, I want an apology, damn it. And so,
Yeah.
And so instead of finding that evidence, he instead found evidence of, some of the top level officials being involved in drug trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering, murder for hire, passport selling, all sorts of nefarious activities. And so you can imagine, it being the Caribbean, what type of people would be funneling money through there, right? So he would have gotten information on all of these people. And what happened with that, how that went sideways was he had a group of girls, I guess, that he was paying, and they were kind of parsing through the information, looking for what was relevant to John, anything related to him. And one of these girls was sleeping with someone within, I think, the police department or the GSU. I never really got that clear, but and she told this, the person she was sleeping with, what they were doing for John. And so that's how the government found out. And that's when they started going after him. So this was around summer of 2012. And so he had been kind of on the run and in hiding in Belize long before the situation with his neighbor. And he always said that he felt like his neighbor being murdered was a botched hit on him, because they were, you're living on a beach. You're not exactly next door to each other, but the property is, kind of next to each other. So there was obviously a distance, but they were next to each other. And he always felt that they got the wrong American. They went to the wrong American's house, and he felt that he would be next. And so, so this is where all of this started from. and why it continued, because of whatever information he had. Obviously, someone is desperate to keep it quiet.
Okay, real quick, I'm a little geeky. John's
Yeah.
such a brilliant man. I love to figure out like how his mind was working, and I think I missed this detail. What happened with the I guess the transmission? You said he gave them some laptops?
Yes, he gave them laptops with keystroke logging information.
Right.
Basically, backdoor
But what
information
was his
to.
excuse for them to take the
It was
laptops?
just a gift, just a gift.
Oh, okay. Ah,
So
that's how
he
you
gave it.
planned it
So
to
he gave
do.
it to the women, obviously, because maybe the men would be suspicious. But he gave it to the women, And here, I don't know if he gave it to them personally or how that was delivered to them. But
Right.
um,
Man,
but
that's genius. And like it just goes to show you like how genius this guy was. Like he's in the jungle working on like some topical anti. Has nothing to do with computers. Like
no, no, and you know what? I think that was going to be his biggest sort of reinvention yet. Obviously he was kind of the master of reinvention, and I think it would have been awesome. Could you imagine
that,
McAfee antivirus, but for your body?
but for
Like,
your
come on.
body, that would have been next level. Oh my God. Like I said before, I don't know if you guys have seen our previous interview, but I had a chance to interview Janice and John on his channel with my sis, Crypto Wendy Yo.
Hey,
And
Wendy.
it was a movie.
Yeah.
It was an absolute movie. Like John is a real life superhero.
Mhm.
Straight up and down. Real life superhero. He's like miscreant good. Like, he's gonna be cussing you out, He's like Batman almost, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But just a genius. Okay, so that whole Belize stuff, I'm not going to include all those details in this interview because I really want people to see, because he talks about like how he met you and you guys are running from the Belize in America and that whole situation. Y'all got to go. I'm telling you, I got to go watch that. To this day, I always tell people like, yo, you never watched that video? Like, you've never watched that? You never watched? How do you miss that of all my interviews? But absolute movie. So, okay. So I think that interview with you guys was at least 2 years ago, I want to say.
We were actually in Spain when we did that. I think that was probably the last or one of the last interviews that we did together before he was arrested.
Okay. Because when we did that interview, you guys couldn't tell us where you were.
Yeah.
Right. But at that moment, that's when you guys are in Spain. Okay. So I guess prior to all of that was what you told us in the beginning of this story, in the beginning of this interview, was how you guys had to go from Cuba, Bahamas, Cuba, and then
why we have to leave America. Yeah, because it started there. Mind you, his Belize issues followed him, into America. And like you said, your viewers, if you haven't watched that first interview, please go and watch it, because we do talk about that. But there was kind of a never-ending sort of revolving door of people. So I wasn't unique, in that, being commissioned to try to, help him get collected, right? That wasn't a unique situation. There was a lot of people that came into his life for that very reason. And so it was very intense. And there was a lot of situations where we had to go, and go dark or go into hiding, even in the US. But I think once the situation happened with the grand jury, obviously he understood a lot better than I did what that meant, because I also was named in this I guess indictment, or I don't even know how to call it, but there was a secret grand jury that was held, and there was, I guess, talk of charges that were going to be brought up against myself, John, and 4 other people. And he explained that with grand juries, like, you're not allowed to go in there with representation. So you're not allowed to go in there with an attorney. And they're allowed to question you. And just the fact that you're not allowed to have an attorney, that's very alarming, that, not being able to properly represent yourself, and also not knowing, what exactly the charges are, or what, what angle they're coming from. So they could basically do or say whatever. And the next thing you're locked up. So obviously John wasn't having none of that. So we left. But it was a very intense time, extremely intense. And, John drank a lot. I'm just saying this because he was obviously drunk in that first interview. But a lot of people, they kind of bang on him for that. It's like, how would you handle that enormous amount of pressure, and still be functioning, right? Still be able to live and thrive. I mean, he was just amazing. He was such a genius, at that. Just watching him maneuver and outmaneuver, and not having the same money that he used to have, but still being able to figure out how to Sun Tzu that shit. You know what I'm saying? Very
Yeah.
well. I mean, it was very intense, and so I just hope the viewers will go back and watch that interview, and maybe me giving a little context to our lives, it can help you further understand, the intense amount of pressure that he was under every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm missing a little bit of texture and background on the indictment. When did this indictment occur?
So he got word of it. It would have been November-ish of 2018.
2018. Okay.
So, and it didn't become public until he was arrested, right? So until he was arrested in Spain in October of 2020, yes, 2020, that's when it was made public, and that's when the world knew what, these charges.
So you said it was grand jury that happened in the U.S.
Yes, in Tennessee.
In Tennessee.
I believe it was Tennessee. Yeah, that's where we were living. We had lived there a few years, about 4 years.
Okay. And that's, I guess, was for the tax stuff.
Yeah, for the tax stuff, which is strange because, John was never, well, I should say it this way. He was very vocal about the fact that he was not paying taxes and that he was never going to pay taxes again. And he would write the IRS and tell them, I'm not paying you. So, I mean, if they really wanted to go after him, if this was a legit charge, that we're just legitimately coming after you because you're, you can't do this, then they could have come after him while we were there in America. They could have garnished his Social Security. They could have seized properties, whatever it is that they do, to get their, Uncle Sam got to get paid. So, but they never did that. They never tried to come after him in any way.
So I had to look up. Our interview premiered July 10th, 2020. So I guess this grand jury you're talking about, you said this was 2018. So this is before you even spoke to me.
Right. And he wasn't even supposed to know about it. But the attorney just kind of gave him a heads up that he had been subpoenaed to give testimony to this grand jury. And he was kind enough to share that letter, notice of subpoena for the situation. So like I said, John wasn't supposed to know. It was supposed to be a secret, but he's John McAfee, so he's going to know, what's coming down the pike as it relates to him and his safety. So he was able to find that information out and kind of preempt them coming and kind of Roger Stoning us right in the middle of the night or, early in the morning.
So he never was actually detained?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because you mentioned being questioned. Did you say that, or did I mishear you when you said you're saying if you were detained, it would have been without the attorney?
Yes. That's what I'm saying. If we would have been detained, it would have been detained.
Oh, I got what you're saying. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
Or even if we would have gotten the subpoena for us to go and testify, we obviously would have to appear, and obviously that would have turned the situation into something else. Now we are illegally on the run. Now there is this notice of, we're supposed to appear somewhere and we're not doing that. But there was none of that. So like I said, John preempted that because he found out before they could even do, get to those steps.
Ah, that makes sense. Okay. So he got out of there before they could even file the paperwork and get it to him. Okay. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, that totally makes sense. All right. And then, our story, like I said, that was July 2020. That's when you guys are talking about being here in America on the run from the Belizean government and gangsters and thugs. And yeah, that story, like I said, is a movie. I got to go check that out. Okay, so then, all right, so now catch me up. So now we're in Spain now, and how did you hear about his passing? Well, first of all, you were in communication with John while he was detained in Spain?
Yeah. So, yeah, we were together obviously this whole time. And when he got arrested, it took a few days before I could, get a phone call from him. But I finally did. And yes, to answer your question, we were in communication every day. He got 3 phone calls a day. They were 8 minutes apiece. And he would call me in the morning, in the afternoon, and then kind of in the evening. And yes, we spoke regularly. And how I found out about his passing, so I spoke to him twice that day. This is the day that he went to court for his extradition hearing. And I should say, John had 5 attorneys working on his case. There were 2 American, one for the Tennessee tax charges, and then there was another case that was added by the SEC for I don't want to get the charges wrong, but there was an SEC case that was added, and so we had an attorney for that who was specialized in that situation. So we had a tax specialist and then this SEC specialist, U.S. attorneys. Then we had the Spanish attorney who was recommended by John's friends, and then John was able to get communication from someone who recommended another Spanish attorney who had a little more expertise in extraditions and specifically going up against America. So we had that attorney, and then we had a UK attorney for him because he had dual citizenship. And so I'm saying all that because I just want people to understand that John wasn't in a desperate state of mind when he left court. Okay, everyone understood that they were going to grant the extradition. Obviously, clearly, that's what they were going to do. However, we also understood that the extradition wasn't going to happen in the next day, the next week, month, year. It was going to take time for that to happen. So there was no threat of him being extradited, within the next couple of hours. That just wasn't going to happen. And we also, the attorneys, they had a plan of appeals in place already. And so that's what, John, we spoke about in the morning about, what might happen in court, and probably they're going to grant the extradition, but it would be cool if they didn't, or maybe whatever, just kind of going over the possibilities of what was going to happen. And it was in that conversation that he shared with me about he had a premonition. I don't think I've shared this before, but he said that he had a premonition the night before. But he wouldn't tell me what it was, but just it concerned him because he brought it up to me, but he didn't want to talk about it. And so we just moved past that. And then he comes back from court. We talk in the afternoon, and we talk about the attorney coming to see him and what they're going to discuss, and what plans were in place, and what's the next steps going to be. That's what we talked about on that second phone call. And then, the last thing he said to me was, "I love you, and I'll talk to you in the evening." And so I was, went about my day, and every day I would collect headlines for John just to, read to him and tell him what was happening in the world so he could kind of stay up to date with that. And I ended up somehow on Twitter, and I got a DM, the notification on the DM, and it just said, "Oh my God, tell me this isn't true." And so immediately, obviously, I immediately thinking it has to do with John, and I go to Google, and sure as shit, these reports of him being dead. So that's how I found out.
Wow.
And And that's how his attorney found out, which is ridiculous. You know, like the prison had the phone number that John was calling me on. They could have very easily notified me before I had to find out that way. Um, Even the attorney, like that doesn't even make any sense that the attorney wouldn't have found out.
Yeah.
And so, and let me just say, even in what they reported was a lie, was a complete lie, because he wasn't dead. He was alive, and that's based off of the prison opened an investigation into his suicide, which already was like, okay, that's strange, because they've already reported or told the world that he died of suicide. So why are they now opening an investigation? But I'm thankful that they did. So from that investigative report, it says in there that the guards found, when they found him, he had a pulse. So he was still alive when they found him. He wasn't dead. And so um, the problem obviously then becomes, well, what happened to him from the time that he was found alive to the time that you pronounced him dead? What transpired in between there? Now,
Right.
I saw the footage, so I have a pretty good idea of what transpired in between that. Um,
You mean
and
when you
so
say you saw the footage from the moment that they went into his cell and transported him?
when the I'm sorry, the no, the moment that they found him.
Okay.
So them finding him, the guard, going by his room, seeing him, and then them going in there, and everything after that. So, and even in the investigative report, there's just some very troubling discrepancies and inconsistencies in that report. Um, and then couple that with the surveillance footage that tells a completely different story of how he died, completely different than what the official narrative is. And so that is the demand for the autopsy report. So they've done obviously they've done an autopsy on him, and they have the report. They're just not releasing it now. I will say it's not standard practice for them to automatically release an autopsy report, but however, when it is requested, it's given. And so I requested it before. So they tried to close the investigation, which meant, once they did that, I wouldn't be able to ask for anything. I wouldn't be able to ask for this information. So before they could do that, I requested it, and the judge denied it. And so what we then did was appeal to a higher court in Barcelona, because what they gave us basically was a summary of what the autopsy reports, allegedly what the autopsy report says. So that's what we have, their summary of what they say is in the autopsy report.
Wow. Okay. So quick rewind. It sounds like there's three different stories. It sounds like there's what the media said, what the investigative report said, and what you actually saw in the footage.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, let me see here. The only difference with the report, because obviously I wouldn't have known if he was alive or not. Obviously, they tried to perform whatever procedures, CPR, well, minus the mouth to mouth because of COVID. So they didn't do that. But so I wouldn't have known maybe that he was alive just watching the footage, right? So that is included in the investigative report. But however, everything else corroborates what I see in the report and what I saw in the footage, that corroborates what uh, the different story that's told, the true story that's told of what actually happened to him. And so I'm sorry that I'm being vague about this, but I don't want to give too much information just because of the advice of the attorney that's working on the situation. So I'm trying to give enough to help people understand why I'm even still here in Spain, and also to help them understand why there's been this delay, why there's been this sort of dragging out of time. It's almost 2 years now. But it's important to me. I feel that I need to have the autopsy report. I need to have I need to see what they have to say about this. And the fact that they're not wanting or not willing to give it over tells me what I need to know about that. And I think maybe they're just hoping that I'm just going to go away. But obviously, I'm not going to do that, and so where this goes from there, I'm not sure, but I just know that this is probably the right course of action to try to get this autopsy report, and we're now waiting for the court's decision on whether or not they're going to give us the complete autopsy report. And so they've been keeping John's remains because of this. So because of this appeal, they're holding on to his remains, which is kind of, I guess, a good thing for chain of custody reasons, because if there are any anomalies, to be found, obviously it happened on your watch. They can't then say, well, we gave you custody of his body, you moved him, so we don't know what you did, um, so yeah, that's the situation.
So I want to come back to the autopsy report in
Yes.
just a moment, but I want to understand something. Like I said, when I saw it on social media, immediate denial. I didn't read any articles. I didn't read any tweets. I was like, no, John's still alive. I'm not believing this. I think you said there was a discrepancy between what was reported and what was the real thing. What was reported about his death? What did they say it was?
That he died of suicide.
Okay.
And by hanging.
By
He died
hanging.
from suicide, and that he was found dead in his cell. So this was the reporting, that he was found dead in his cell by suicide, hanging. He hung himself in his cell.
Okay. But the hanging you don't believe happened at all?
No, well, okay. So they found him in that state when they found him. So
Okay.
they found him in that state. Okay, I'm
got
sorry.
you.
I guess maybe I should have explained that.
Okay.
That's how they
So they
found
did find him like that. Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense. Okay. Wow. But
I'm sorry.
but the thing is, it seems like they reported him dead when at the moment he was actually alive.
Yes, he wasn't. So they didn't find him dead in his cell, which is
Right.
what they reported. He was found dead in his cell. He wasn't dead. He was still alive.
Yeah, couple that with the autopsy. That's like super suspicious because, and I'm not trying to minimize the story here, but like when you watch movies like, about like 3-letter agency cover-ups of deaths, that's like classic in the movies where it's like, they rush to get to the media and publish the report before like things even happened actually. You know what I mean? Like before a drug raid happens, they're like report it and then the drug raid happens, or you know what I mean? Like whatever it is.
No, you're correct, because they hadn't even done the autopsy. They hadn't even transported him out of the cell to, their morgue
Right.
when the story broke that they found him dead. So for them to report this cause of death as if that was the actual cause of death, is very negligible on their behalf. But it's the press, so they want to be first to the story, and whatever gets the eyeballs, that's what it is. But then it's also had the effect of, because that's the situation, people are kind of their ears are kind of close to the situation. It's like, oh, okay, he's dead. Okay, move on. What's the next, top of the news story? That's just how our attention spans are.
Right.
So I'm just trying to do what I can to bring attention on the situation, because I think people need to know what is happening.
The other thing I find suspicious is that you're not notified and the attorney's not notified, but they rush to the press. That's another classic 3-letter agency type thing where it's like, go to the press before anybody else is notified. That seems very eerie to me as well, that they wouldn't notify you and they wouldn't notify the attorney. Usually you would notify the family first and then, I guess press second. But it's just, it was like, I'm trying to find out, like, think about, like, why would they, like, it's almost like character assassination in a way, embarrassment. What is the motive here to go to the press and not tell you first? It's like,
Mhm. It's strange. I mean, I, I, I can't speak to that, but what
right.
I will say, maybe because um, I've seen since John died, people kind of making a big deal about us not being legally married anymore in America. So when we did our interview with you, we weren't legally married in America, but I
Hmm.
was still his wife. He was
Right.
still my husband. That's who we were to each other. And we were no longer living in America. So what we were in America didn't matter because we were still together. So, a case could be made that that's why, but then the problem becomes then that in his prison intake information, he listed me as his wife.
Right.
Like that's who I was, because you have to list the people that you want to call, then their phone numbers. So that's who I was. So the prison knew that I was his wife, you know. So I'm not sure. It didn't make sense to me either, but
Yeah. And then now with the autopsy report, they don't want to release it. That's fishy. That
well, not even
stinks.
that. The fact that they gave us a summary of what's in like, why not
Right.
just give us the autopsy report? Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, some third party hand me down, here's what the thing says, but we can't show you the thing.
Right.
Right? So you have the opportunity to omit details or
Mhm.
obfuscate the details.
Right.
Yeah, nah, something's not on the up and up here at all.
No.
So right now you're working with the attorney to get the autopsy report and his body.
Yes. Yeah. Once we get a decision from them, the appeal was filed. The appeal to the higher court in Barcelona was filed in February, and their deadline was supposed to be 6 to 8 months from that file date, which would have put us in October for the around the eighth month. And so now obviously we're here. Now it's March, and so over a year later, still waiting for their decision. And so my goal, my hope for these interviews is to sort of help kind of put a spotlight on this, so that kind of put some pressure on them to stop stalling, and just render their decision. Because once, at least once I have that, then I'll know where to go from there, instead of just being in this kind of holding pattern, waiting for their decision.
Yeah. So how do we help? I know you said you wanted to get the word out there. I'm glad you're on my channel. I'm able to help in that regard. But are you able to speak to larger media outlets? What's going on with that?
Um, so honestly, I feel like there's an effort to kind of keep this quiet, very much so, because like, even when I'm on Twitter, like, a lot of people aren't seeing my tweets, or even from John's account when I tweet. So I know that there's kind of just this sort of black hole where the things that I'm doing are kind of disappearing into. But I've been doing some interviews here with local Spanish, what do I want to say, journalists and publications here. But aside from that, I don't know what to do. I'm just one person. I obviously have a petition, releasemcafee.com. You can go there, sign, share,
What
and
is the
and
website?
releasemcafee.com. And I'm working on something a little bigger to kind of help people kind of keep up to date with what's happening. And so outside of, I've genuinely thought about this. I honestly don't know what could help, because you have a situation here where they're not wanting to say what happened, right? They want what they've already reported to be the official story, and they're obviously not willing to back down from that.
Yeah. Okay. So that took me to a petition. Now I saw people tag me in this, and I was just like, I don't, I'm usually leery because people, anybody can just pop things up. So
Um,
I feel better knowing that you're behind this. So, I'll do my best to disseminate this. I myself will definitely sign this and attach myself to it. Um, and it is in the chat. It is in the description box of this video as well. So people can participate in that, and hopefully we can help you reach the goal. Right now, the goal looks like 7,500 signatures. But yeah, this is absolutely insane, man. It's
Right.
absolutely insane. And you have every right, and what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, you're just justified in being suspicious,
Right.
because if everything was on the up and up, you would have the autopsy, you would have the remains, and they wouldn't have handed you a summary.
Right. Even the investigative report, that's a joke. There's so much information missing from that. Um, so they didn't. I was never able to see the footage, like the full footage from the day. The day, that entire day. Just that portion that I already explained to you, that I was showed. Um, but in the report, they gave still shots from the camera. So there was a camera obviously facing the cell. So they gave still shots from it, and you see John talking to so many different people, other inmates, guards, standing in the front of his doorway, or in the hallway. But there's no statements from any of these people. There's not even a statement from the person who was the last to see him alive, which would have been his cellmate. Um, and just because you would think that these things would be included, just to kind of speak to his state of mind, or what was going on with him. Did he have any altercations with anyone? How was he feeling basically that day? But I will say, when I was able to also go to the prison and collect his belongings, which I believe, even that, they didn't give me all of his belongings, his writings, which were, I don't know. That seemed very important to me, that all of his writings were gone. Like, none of his writings were there. So he was not tweeting from prison, obviously. But obviously you can get a phone in prison, because that's what happens. I'm not sure in Spanish prison, but he wasn't tweeting from prison. So he was reading his tweets, and then I was getting them tweeted for him. And there was none of that. None of those papers where he, was obviously reading the tweet to me. But there was none of that paperwork, no journaling, no writing, because obviously he would have been writing. Because he did write some books himself, and so that's obviously what he would have been doing. No mail from people. He had people mailing, sending him mail. None of that was even there. A lot of his clothes were missing. Um, so um, so that we have that portion. But I was also able to speak to the gentleman who was over. I guess he was kind of the head guard over the guards, and he expressed to me. Now, he was speaking Spanish, and it was being translated to me. But he expressed that everybody was shocked. Nobody, like, they didn't see that coming, because he was still his same self. Nothing had changed as far as his behavior or his demeanor after he came back from court, getting this news, which they're trying to spin, or the media has tried to spin and say, oh, he was just so distraught, at the fact that they granted this extradition, that he decided to suicide himself. And so even that, it's like, to go out of his way to kind of express that to me. And it didn't seem like he was just trying to say something to make me feel better. It came from a genuine place. Mind you, I only understand a little bit of Spanish, but his, the emotion that translates, and he was really kind of dumbfounded at what happened. There was just, shock, and just having a hard time believing that had happened. And he didn't have, from what he told me, he didn't have like altercations with people in the prison. Now maybe he might not have told me everything, but it wasn't his first time being in prison, and not his first time being in a foreign prison, so he knew how to handle himself. There was one situation that he said, from a new inmate that had just been transferred in, who kind of tried to get in his face. but another inmate immediately got in between him and them, that between John and that person, and said, no, we don't do that here. Basically like, chill with all that, So he had a good rapport, from what he told me, with the other prisoners. He was kind of a celebrity there, obviously, because they knew who he was, and they were surprised that he was there with them, because he wasn't like secluded in a special area for old people, or because he was American or whatever, or because he was somewhat of a celebrity. He was in the general population, with everybody, and but there's just a lot of questions, a lot of questions, and it's just very problematic. And again, I completely understand people wanting to believe that he's alive somewhere, and this is not to you so much as it is to the audience at large, because I know that there's a large portion of people who believe that he is somewhere in witness protection or something. And I can only tell you what I know, and something that I know for sure is that I would have heard from him. Like, I know that, just because I can see that there probably could have been a plan in place for him to, Houdini himself out of there, however that had to happen. Um, but I just honestly believe that they killed him instead. That whatever happened, the plan changed, and they killed him instead.
So we don't have any footage, prior to, when they found his body, like, because you would see if somebody else entered his cell or anything like that. It feels like the whole Epstein thing where, oh, the cameras go out, the guards asleep, and then, oh, and the you know what I mean, like.
Right. No, you're right. And then, but that's strange that they would include still shots from the footage that they didn't provide. Um,
Right.
so strange.
Yeah.
Um,
You
so
figured they would
I
have.
don't know. It's just,
And the other thing is, I think that if that happened, I think the public would have had that footage. I
yeah.
think they would have loved to say, ha, look, he did this to himself. And they would have
Right.
released the footage to the public. But the
Mhm.
fact that the footage doesn't, well, obviously it exists, but the
Yeah.
fact that nobody's seen it
Mhm.
is a bit suspicious as well.
Right.
Um, and then the report. So the report, you're looking at it from a very common sense perspective, saying, why weren't some things done? Were there some things omitted from the report? Or you're just looking at it from like, why didn't you ask a roommate? Like you said, that just makes sense that you would ask for a testimony from a cellmate.
Right. So I'm not sure what the standard practice is, and uh, the attorney is obviously kind of dumbfounded at the situation as well, because he's you know said repeatedly that they're not doing anything according to the law and according to their procedures, their standard practice of procedures. They're not doing any of that. So so he's even very much confused by the situation. Now, I can't say that these things were omitted. I'm just thinking from a practical standpoint, wouldn't those statements be included?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be something that would be a part of this, since you're going through the trouble of investigating, where is all of the information that should be standard to be included,
Right.
I would think. So I don't know if there's an intent to withhold, or maybe they just don't go detailed like that. I'm not sure. So I don't want to make an accusation as far as that goes, but it's just, there's really nothing of substance there, in the report. It's just only talking about um, what happened when they found him. That's it. There's no, like I said, talking to the other people to kind of get a status of his state of mind, right? So we can understand, what was going on with him before he was found, that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, is there anything else you want to say to the public, are there any questions I should have asked you that weren't asked? Um,
Um,
as we have, the audience here listening, and then the people
um,
that are on the playback. I just want to make sure that if there's anything you want to get off your chest, I gave you that opportunity just in case we missed something. I feel like we did a thorough job, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, I feel like we did a thorough job as well, but I just want to reiterate the fact that he wasn't dead when they found him. He was alive. He had a pulse. Um, and he could have been saved. That's that. Now that's just my belief.
And that's according to the report, right?
But according to the report, he was alive.
Right.
Okay. Now the report doesn't say that he could have been saved, obviously.
Right.
But he was alive according to the report. Yes, this is not me. I'm not making up anything. This is in their report that he was alive. He had a pulse.
Yeah.
And so, but it doesn't state what transpired after that, in between, from them finding him and what procedures they did and why they felt like he was beyond, them being able to help him. But again, the footage is what kind of covers what happened in between there. And it just tells a very different story. It tells a very different story of how he actually died. And that's what I want people to know. And I feel like once I'm able to maybe get his remains, maybe I'll feel a little more comfortable sharing all of that. But because I'm still here and things can be made difficult even more so for me, I'm just kind of hesitant on sharing everything.
I understand.
And maybe I don't need to be that way because of so much time has gone by, but I'm just trying to be wise in that regard, and just try to share enough to have people understand what is happening and why I'm doing the things that I'm doing and why, maybe help them understand why it's taking so long and why they're trying to delay, releasing the autopsy on his remains. Yeah. And so that's what the things that I want people to know. I guess.
No, that totally makes sense. Yeah, I mean, my heart goes out to you. Like I said, John was like Batman to me, man. It was like, after our interview, man, you can ask Wendy, I was speechless. Like, what just happened? You guys got to go back and watch that interview. I'm telling you right now. I thought I knew who John McAfee was, but until that interview, I was just like, I just felt like I was nobody. Like I was like, going to the interview, I'm like, I'm pretty well accomplished. I've got a few more goals, and then I go in and I'm like, I'm like 1/10 of the man that John is. And his story, amazing guy.
He I will say this, like he was brilliant and he was a genius, but he didn't get his big break, I guess, until he was like, I think in his 40s. So that's kind of, on par. I'm in my 40s, so maybe I'm gonna hit my stride here soon enough. So I'm just saying, don't feel bad about that.
Yeah. No, but it was inspirational, right? It was just like, because sometimes you think what the ceiling is, right? What the bar is, and you're like, okay, this is where the bar is. Then I spoke to him. I heard his story. I'm like, oh no, the bar ain't here. The bar is like way up there.
In the stratosphere.
Yeah, it's in the stratosphere. So it's just like, now I have something to measure myself to, because I don't like measuring myself with my peers. I like measuring myself with people who are like in the next realm, like Elon, McAfee, these guys. So when I heard his story, just how he dealt with, your relationship, his bravery, ingenuity, his genius, all of that was just like, it motivated me to go a little bit harder, Yeah. In fact, I started homeschooling my kids, and part of our curriculum is going to be sit down and watch that interview.
Okay, I don't know. Well, there was a lot of cursing in there, so
I curse a lot, so
okay, so they're used to it. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, the boys.
That was an awesome interview.
It was an awesome interview. They're teenagers, so they're not kids. But I need them to sit down and see that, right, and see like what a man has accomplished and what a man could go through and that just journey. Um, yeah, just absolutely inspiring. I got a couple of super chats I'm going to read here. It says Inside the Ages. Shout out to Inside the Ages, very insightful individual. Um, it says R.I.P. John, a hero of the liberty of mind, of the mind. Yes, John is gone, but he lives free in the hearts of all. He is inspired to be bold in speaking the truth above all and revealing himself as supremely unique indeed. Absolutely, absolutely. I love that. That's a beautiful message inside the ages. John Stevenson, he says, I'm so sorry you went through this, Janet. You all will be in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you, John. I appreciate that, man. And Jag, what up, Jag? Jag said his curiosity. Yeah. I mean, you can't really come to these great ideas without having that curiosity, right? It's something that is innate in him, you know, that allowed him to just explore like that. Shout out to Jag. Jag is the one of the founders of Syscoin. Salute to Jag.
Oh, sir.
But Janice, it's an absolute pleasure and an honor to be able to have that first interview with guys, and then, you know, I hate that I'm doing this interview on these circumstances.
I know.
And I feel guilty saying it's an honor to be someone to talk to about this. I kind of feel guilty saying that, but at least I can help, I guess. You know what I mean? But I wish you all the best. I'm going to help push out the petition. I'm going to sign it myself and, you know, put my signature on that. And, you know, if you ever need anything else, like, you know, you DM me. I'm a DM away. If you need my phone number, you got my phone number. And we could definitely work together.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to come speak with your audience, and hopefully this kind of clears up things. You know what? Do we have time for one more thing, actually?
Absolutely.
I don't want to go over the hour, but
No, go, please.
okay, I just wanted to speak to the dead man switch. I've had a lot of people ask me that, and I've had someone comment to me that because of it not being released, that this is why people feel that John is alive. And so I know that John had this information. I don't know where it is, who has it, who has access to it, or who has control over it. But I do not believe that. So the dead man switch was kind of his ace in the hole, and it was this 31 terabytes of information that he was able to collect. I'm assuming from Belize, or it could have been something more. I don't know, but he commented on it, he tweeted about it. And so this is something that the public knows, which is why I'm bringing this up. And again, I would never have had any intimate knowledge in that, because that's something that would have put me in danger, and that's the last thing John would have wanted to do. And so this is why I also believe that it probably is not in anyone's control, because it would make him vulnerable, right? To have this sort of kind of ace in the hole situation, and then to have someone know about it, well, then that, you know, that kind of defeats the purpose. And it could also put that potential person in danger, right? So
Right.
I don't think that we would ever get an announcement that would say, like, okay, here is John McAfee's, 31 terabytes of information. I don't think it would be anything like that. I think John was more subtle than that. And I think maybe we would just maybe see the effects of that information being released. Again, this is just my speculation. And again, I can only tell you the things that I know, that I've seen, and I've not seen any evidence that he's alive anywhere. The telegram, I've had people ask me about that as well. There's a telegram that, John McAfee afterlife, that's not associated with John. He didn't have a telegram. Well, he had one when during the Team McAfee days, but he stopped using it after that. So whoever is running that, I don't know, and it's not connected to John. And so I just kind of wanted to address those little things, just to kind of give people an understanding of what I think about that.
So did John say he had a dead man switch? Or people thinking about this, or it
He,
does
he
this?
said he said that he tweeted about it. He said that he had 31 terabytes of information, and if anything happened to him, that it would be released to different media outlets.
Okay, so people are wondering what's good with that,
What
basically.
happened with that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, he definitely wouldn't give you that information. That doesn't make sense because that would definitely put your life in danger. Yeah, or any individual. Um, okay, no, that is a good last piece of information there. But he hadn't said anything more than it exists. He didn't say when it would be
No, he
released.
didn't say anything more. There was a situation. I think people were trying to correlate the collapse of there was a condo or apartment building that collapsed in Miami. I don't know if this was around the same time after he died. And so they were trying to tie those things together, that maybe people were trying to find that information. Now I don't have any knowledge of that, but outside of that being, kind of coupled with that, I don't I've not heard anything more, about obviously about the information, except for his initial tweet, and then people trying to tie that together with it. And so, again, I honestly, I just don't believe that there will be some grand announcement. Here it is. Here's the information. I think John would have found another way to have released that information, and maybe not even in the way that he tweeted about. Maybe that was just a misdirection. He was a master at misdirection, and so, but I don't know. And who's to say it's not been released? There's the thing about that as well. Who's to say that it's not somewhere in the ether? I don't know. I'm just, kind of speculating while I'm on air with you because I want to make sense of these things as well. And I want people to kind of understand what my thoughts around it, just because I had this intimate relationship with John, and I can't say that I knew him the best, because obviously he was, obviously there was parts of him that he kept, just for himself. That's what we do as human beings. But I knew him better than most, and so I just want to share, my thoughts about these
Yeah, well,
things.
it wouldn't be the first time the media sat on information. I know, after we went and ransacked Libya, a major media outlet sat on the fact that Libya now had slaves. They sat on that information till it was timely, So, like you said, maybe they have it, and they're just sitting on it. Who knows? But yeah, man. Shout out to my viewers for listening here, and
Thank
Janice, you're a strong individual, and I couldn't imagine being in your shoes and having to do this. But again, I just I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for having me. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll chat soon.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel and share this video out. Share the petition that's in the go sign and share the petition. It's in the description box. It's in the chat. Natasha has just put the link in the chat again, so please sign that, disseminate it, proliferate it, get it out there, and help her reach her goal here. And share this video and go watch our first interview. It's truly inspiring. I'm Hotep Jesus, and everyone have a wonderful night.
Hotep